All right. How about this story? Violent new protests erupting yet again in Ferguson, Missouri after the controversial shooting death of an unarmed black teenager.
You must disperse immediately. This is no longer a peaceful protest when you try to injure people. You must disperse now.
It's unbelievable what is happening here. The police forced to use tear gas and smoke bombs to try to disperse protesters because they said it was turning violent. They wanted everyone to go home, many of them launching Molotov cocktails at the officers. All this after a police officer shot and killed a teenager, 18-year-old Michael Brown, in Ferguson, Missouri. Joined now by David Webb, the host of the David Webb radio show on Sirius XM, and Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio talk show host. Both are Fox News contributors. This situation, Leslie, does not seem to be calming down. You know, when you look at these pictures of the police in riot gear in the streets, it looks like 1968.
No question. You know, I was listening to one of the journalists that had been detained, not officially arrested, from that McDonald's. And he said that it was a huge concern. He said that as a journalist, he's actually never seen police coming out like the National Guard with the SWAT team type of and riot gear that they have, and the level of gunpowder. He said the overwhelming majority of these people are peaceful. That the rock throwing, Molotov cocktail throwing was from a very small minority, and that did happen after nightfall. And this is obviously a situation where the people are very angry, and the people, there are two very different accounts of the story between the police and eyewitnesses, including the young man that was walking alongside Michael Brown the day of the fatal shooting.
It's a terrible situation. And as you point out, a lot of these protesters are peaceful. But David, we also know that the Black Panthers have arrived on the scene, and looking at some of what they're putting out on the Facebook page, they're encouraging people to loot, to give away the stuff that they find in stores. They're encouraging people to hang tough and not to listen to those who are telling them to stay peaceful.
Yeah, and Martha, you know, you have to look at what they have to work with. You have a town, unfortunately, Ferguson, which also has a high crime index rating, higher than the surrounding communities, so that's an additional problem. You know, King Samir Shabazz and the new Black Panther Party, they did this in other situations. They foment hate. This is a guy who says, kill white people, dig them up, kill them again, bury them, dig them up, kill babies. That doesn't help. And you know, Leslie's got a point about the numbers here that needs to be put in perspective. That is that, yes, there are only a few people throwing Molotovs, or several, out of the larger crowd, but the problem is safety. The minute they start doing that, the police have a responsibility as well to the community to make sure that that doesn't escalate. So you do that by dispersing the crowd. You know, the people that are protesting, and I'm for protesting, this should be investigated. If the cop's guilty, you prosecute him. If Michael Brown is the one that's guilty of the bad action, then the community should look at itself.
Yep.
But also, we have to really look at what the safety and the public safety issue is. The reporters.
Yeah, the investigation is ongoing. I mean, they're in the beginning of this, as we have stated very clearly here. The police officers and the witness have very different stories, and then the investigation is underway. One of the big issues is that they have not named this police officer, and I want to play the chief of police, who was on last night with Sean Hannity, on the reason why. Here he is.
We had originally believed that, you know, we had an obligation to release that information to the public and to the press. But what happened is another officer's name was released as being the officer involved in the shooting. He was not, but his picture was put up on the internet. His Facebook page was hacked, and death threats started coming in.
Leslie, I mean, this officer is a human being too, and so is his family, and he has his story to tell, and it will be told in court, and the decision will ultimately be made by a jury, I imagine, in this. So do you agree that he should be protected given these incredibly volatile circumstances right now?
Well, first of all, I've spoken on my radio show to a number of people in Ferguson who say that they in the community know who the police officer is. This information that's being leaked and is being given is to the rest of us outside of Ferguson. I do think that it's essential because of the heightened race relation issues there in Ferguson that's been growing for years. But at the same time, there's anger over not just false information about this officer, but the type of picture and the way Michael Brown is being portrayed, even though he's been shown to be a good kid with good grades who was going to be going to college. You know, again, we have very different accounts on both sides. And regarding the looting, David and I agree on a couple of points. I have to commend the people that I've spoken to in Ferguson who say that
Leslie,
has got to stop.
I got to jump in for a second.
The owners
Leslie,
of these
hold
shops
on.
have nothing to do with this.
Put that picture back up. What is the objection to the pictures that are being shown of Michael Brown? Because I had not heard that.
Well, yeah, yesterday on my radio show, there were some people in Ferguson, some that know Michael Brown as well, that there were some pictures out there that show him, I believe the one that you're showing right now, and a couple of others that they said their terminology was they felt that it portrayed him more like a thug. They felt that the visual image was negatively portraying a young man they felt to be a very good student and a good kid overall.
I mean, it doesn't look like a bad picture. I don't know, David. Do you find is there anything that you find objectionable about the picture situation? Because I remember we had all this with Trayvon Martin as well in terms of the pictures that were shown.
And the picture's a distraction, Martha, unless there's something really outrageous out there. But back to what you asked about and the safety issue. Neither story has been determined by the evidence, which includes a coroner's report, bullet entry, angle of entry, all these things that matter, which is what evidence is. That hasn't been determined. So therefore, the police officer has a right to safety. And here's the issue. It's the few that will go out and either act against him or his family. He has a right to be determined to be innocent till proven guilty, just like Michael Brown does. You can't apply separate measures. The investigation can continue without his name being out there because the police know who he is, the feds know who he is, the parties know it, and even in the prosecution, discovery means that the defense or the lawyers for Michael Brown will also know. So this idea that the police officer's name and that his safety doesn't matter, it does matter. What if somebody does something to his family, and what does the community do?
If anything happens to him, we're not going to hear this whole story either. And that is part of this equation and investigation. Leslie, thank you. David, thank you.
Good to see you, Martha.
Big story.
Thank
we'll
you,
see you
Martha.
next time.
All right.
All right.
Your government's